Well, hello everybody. It's Craig and Richard here for our week 3 feedback video. Richard, it's why is a really interesting week, isn't it? The week that the cognitive practices kind of step into the picture.
And multitasking week, I would add as well.
Oh, it's a favourite, isn't it? Especially in the modern world. If we'd run this course 30, 40 years ago, I don't think it would have been such an issue, but it is certainly.
The cognitive practices would have been, perhaps.
Yeah. And really what these are making explicit something that's implicit in the formal and informal practice of mindfulness, and just understanding how the mind works, the cognitive processes, and just getting curious. Like the first thing is catastrophizing, noticing how much catastrophizing goes on, and how to manage that, and how to help others also not to get caught into that sort of style. And I think the best way is just for us in our own instance to just step back and just kind of get curious, just start to notice this stuff, and not in a I wish it wasn't going on kind of way, but just in a sort of what, isn't that interesting? Look at what the mind's doing, and it's like, look how the mind's projecting, looking how the mind's making assumptions, and just sort of a curious sort of impartial observer of it. And in our conversation, like even therapeutically, in consulting sort of process, or with a friend who's kind of caught in that, is just to take that same attitude of just standing back and just helping the person to look at the process, look at the effect of it, look at what's behind it. And so in a sense, it helps us to stand out of the thinking. And it's not my catastrophizing, it's just noticing catastrophizing, noticing the effect of it, And that impartial view, I think, really helps enormously.
It's so important to see things clearly, isn't it? Just to really look with clear, fresh, mindful eyes and to really see what's happening. I mean, that's the first step in any change that we want to make. And sometimes just to see things clearly means that we don't have to perhaps make huge changes in our lives. We just start to live more in alignment with what's really, I guess you could say, true, or what's meaningful, or what has a sort of a sense of integrity for us.
Yeah, and this came up quite a lot this week in relation to acceptance. Like, what is acceptance?
Yes.
Do I accept all of this stuff I don't like about myself? Some interesting reflections there, Richard.
Some really great reflections, but one learner in particular say, look, I don't particularly like who I am, and I want to change myself. I want to change my behaviors and who I am. Most, if not all of me. And how will I ever be a better person if I accept myself? And I think this is actually, this gets to a very important central question in mindfulness, which is, is acceptance the same as resignation and giving up and just sort of, that's how I am and I'll always be like that? And I think it's very important to, first of all, separate those two out. To accept something, whether it's the situation we're in or ourselves, it doesn't mean to just be resigned that we're never going to change. In fact, if we're mindful and really looking, we see that we're always changing. We're not the same from moment to moment to moment. We have habits and stuff, I guess, that can persist. But yeah, we're actually always changing. That's just the nature of things. So it's not like we do actually get stuck. I mean, we all kind of mature, I guess, as we get older, well, hopefully. But yeah, but when we don't accept who we are, if we start from that point, I think there are a couple of things, and I mean, I'll say a couple of things about this, but I'd certainly invite that learner and perhaps all of our learners to observe themselves and notice if it's true for themselves. When we judge ourselves negatively, we tend to feel contracted and stressed. It triggers the stress response, basically triggers the amygdala, and then we're in a mode of kind of stress and contraction, and it's not a particularly conducive mode for any kind of growth mindset, for any kind of real growth. We're often get very sort of contracted, and the other thing, of course, is that we don't see clearly what's happening. When we're judging and evaluating what's happening around us or within us, what we see, what we're aware of, are the judgments, and we don't actually see what's going on. And when we let go of judgment and just accept that right now things are as they are, then we can start to see really clearly, okay, that's what's happening in this moment. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm feeling. That's what's going on for me. And it actually opens up a whole lot of space for effective behavior change. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, yes, because when, this sort of seeing something, and it's one thing to see something, it's not helpful. There was arrogance, or there oh, there was anger or there was something else. It's one thing to see it, oh, that's not helpful. And then we sort of see kind of a little bit more what's behind it and what's the effect of it. But when we see it without acceptance, I hate that, I can't, we actually start to trigger a whole like stream of ruminative thought, negative self-commentary, and the attention it fixates on actually binds us more. It actually empowers more the negativity and this sort of sense of fighting with something. You know, there's this little thing I can remember as a child. I don't know if you ever did it, but it's like this little tube, and you put your fingers in, and if you try to pull out hard, what it does is it tightens on your fingers.
Oh yeah, the old finger trap. I think it was maybe called a Chinese finger trap back then. Probably it's not from China, but yeah.
I don't know if it's or not, but you know, you pull hard and it binds you, and it's whereas accepting, you know, acceptance means a situation is what it is. It doesn't mean that that's how it's going to stay, but just this is where we are. This is what is in front of one. But it's just like learning to just gently take the fingers out. And we don't trigger that kind of binding sort of effect that all of a sudden we feel caught in it. And so change, I mean, as you said, yes, it happens, but this sort of intense judging and criticizing doesn't get us off on the right foot.
No, I heard another metaphor once. Someone's like, you buy a house from eBay, which perhaps isn't actually sort of unheard of these days, buying houses online, and perfect location, perfect number of rooms, whatever. You get there and the house is bright purple. Now, of course, you could be like, oh my God, I bought a purple house. I'm going to get my money back. Can't believe I did that. What an idiot. What kind of an idiot paints their house purple? Or you could just accept that it's purple and start to repaint it the color that you want it. And perhaps, you know, when we step out of all that judgment and reactivity, we're more able to work skillfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Being present was another important topic this week. And
yes.
And one learner was describing how actually all of a sudden being present, notice graffiti and rubbish and things more. And I suppose when we're more present, we notice a bit of our own internal graffiti.
It's true.
And why shouldn't we notice it more in the environment? And it's like as if, oh, well, I won't be present, so I don't notice it. Well, I suppose if everybody in the community is not present, not noticing it, it just kind of the situation gets worse and worse. But we need to pay attention to actually realize, wait a sec, is this the urban environment we want to create? You know, like it's not just an individual thing, it's a collective kind of waking up and being present and actually seeing what's there. And I think that, you know, waking up, one of the things that makes it uncomfortable is that we do notice a bit of the mess. Now that's a sign of progress because we can't do anything about anything internally or externally unless we first see the situation for what it is. And so that first step into awakening is often an uncomfortable one.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because these two learners have asked the same question, one about the external environment, the other one about the internal environment. I guess our answer is the same, that when we come at it with fresh eyes and we let go of judgments, that we can see things clearly. And even though that might be confronting to see clearly what's really going on, it's actually perhaps a very important first step. Multitasking and productivity came up as well.
I just add something to that as well. Sometimes when we pay attention and look around, there's lots of graffiti. Some of it wants to be removed, but some graffiti can be beautiful as well.
That's correct. Yeah.
And, some of it is really very fine art, so we can appreciate even those things that we see and don't immediately like as well. But yes. Richard, a bit about multitasking has come up this week as well.
Well, of course, it comes up every time we run this course, doesn't it? People noticing. I was really heartened to hear that a lot of our learners have noticed, hey, I can't really multitask well. I can't do multiple things well at the same time. And they were already either not doing that a whole lot or perhaps starting to come out of that habit and to cultivate unitasking. But the big challenge, of course, is when other people are multitasking, and how do we encourage them to stop doing that? And it's such a huge thing, isn't it? I mean, it's certainly a lot of young people these days, when I talk to them, they have in fact, a lot of people, I think, you don't know what you don't know, right? They're not aware of the impacts of just being constantly distracted and doing multiple things at the same time. It's only when we stop and really have an experience of being fully present that we can realize, oh, wow, that's actually quite nice. So if this is, I don't know if this is a parent or if this is someone whose partner is always on their phone or whatever it is, I think number one piece of advice would be just to embody what you want, be the change. So just make sure that you're fully present with people. you don't have to interact with someone who's distracted. You are allowed to have boundaries around that and just say, well, I'm not going to have that kind of interaction. And if that's what they want to do, then I might just go and talk to someone else now. You might have a talk to them about it. Maybe you could try to engineer a situation where it's just there's no other distractions. Perhaps you go for a walk out in nature or spend some time doing something where it's just focused on one thing, and perhaps have a conversation about that at the end. What was that like? Did you enjoy that? And maybe it'll be a pleasant experience for them. Maybe they'll bump into a whole lot of stuff they don't want to face in themselves, which is, I think, why a lot of the time people are distracting themselves and multitasking.
Yeah, because we do have to see this sort of thing for ourselves. And I think for many people, they won't have noticed the impact of multitasking just skimming over the surface of experience. There was a question related to is taking notes, during a talk, is that multitasking? And or listening to a GPS while you're driving, is that multitasking? Not really, actually, because it's a bit different that they're two parts of the one sort of
experience,
activity, if you like.
Yeah.
The two things are related. It's different trying to take notes from one talk while you're trying to listen to another one. Things, but the hearing and the translating into writing it down. And I've seen some a review paper that was sort of saying that if you're trying to type, you take in less than if you're actually writing notes, because you actually have to listen and distill more the key messages that are coming in. When you're writing, you can type faster and just do it on automatic pilot kind of thing and not really engage with the material. But so just the final thing, a lot of learners enjoying the 10-minute meditation, breath and sounds and so on. And mind you, when you create a little bit of that mental space, sometimes useful things pop into the mind and it's so tempting to sort of go with them, but just make a note, come back to them later. But great to hear that people are getting into the slightly longer meditations, and of course we'll provide a longer one still as well. Anyway, that's perhaps all for this week, Richard. So we'll look forward to being with everybody next week, and I hope everybody has a really mindful time between now and then.
See you then.